pricing in red waters is like fishing for piranhas.
Pricing and piranhas. That's the new season of the podcast.
You are in a jungle in Ecuador in a canoe fishing for piranhas.
That's correct, yes.
How many of you in a canoe?
I think there were 2 of us in our canoe, and we were maybe in a group of about 8 people or something like that. And it's like a sort of theme park for 20-year-old traveling types. You know, you go into the jungle, you do some camping out, they take you piranha fishing, you eat the piranhas later, you take their jaws home as like a little kind of post-barbecue memento to display your kind of species strength, and off you go. Right.
If you're watching this morning, we've scrapped talking about money. We're going to start talking about scrap pricing. Go for piranhas.
Exactly. It's all about the peas.
All about the peas. If you are watching this, please do a thumbs up if you've ever been fishing for piranhas. If not, a thumbs down. And I'm going to guess at how many of the audience have actually fished for piranhas. We've also got a little poll going on. So let us know where you're at in your pricing world. And the final job for you to do, if you can't be asked doing the others, just say hello in the chat. Share where you are watching from, and maybe a word or two of how you're feeling, while we try and work out what we're going to be talking about today. Emergent strategy. Mm-hmm. So this. I've called this season 3. Season 3 of
what was season 1?
Season 1 was our build-up to the first ever happy pricing course.
Okay, yes, of course it was. Of course. How could I forget?
Season 1 was that mad scramble of trying to work out what are we doing, and trying to get people on board. Hi, Simon. Oh, Simon is wet in Bristol. I'm sorry to hear that. It's actually quite sunny here in Hove.
It is.
I think it still is sunny. Still is sunny. Yesterday was crazy with the rain. Hi, Sam. Brilliant. Thank you. Listening while doing the dishes.
Multitasking. Okay. No piranhas in there.
Yeah. It's, I love that because it's basically you're being doubly effective. You're like learning about pricing and you're keeping the house clean. That's the kind of productivity that we look for in our happy pricing followers. I'm all for that. I was told multitasking is just the process of doing many things badly. But
maybe for you,
but
not for Sam.
No, Sam. I'm sure Sam is fully in control, or she's just not listening to us at all and just washing the dishes.
Yeah.
I want to know how she's able to type while her hands.
This sounds like a health and safety hazard.
Exactly. You got to watch out there. It's
voice activated. Yeah. She's communicating via Alexa.
It's too much technology. Yeah, I don't trust Alexa in my case, Siri. I don't trust her to understand a word I say. Too many mixed up text messages getting sent with the wrong message. But we digress because we can't think of what to say. But what we were going to talk about, we were going to a bit of a recap on the second happy pricing course that we kicked off, or we finished. Is it nearly 3 weeks ago?
I think it might be nearly 3 weeks ago. Certainly 2, a few weeks ago. Yeah,
and as always, it was great for us. Lovely energy, great learning experience. Thankfully, most people liked it.
That's a win.
I got what they needed. I shared the feedback form with Ben last night. Hopefully, he's studied it rigorously and all the amazing feedback that we've been getting. I was going to touch on, I think, firstly, I thought what would be good is just to recap for those who don't know anything about the happy pricing course and what it's about and what we're trying to do with it. Maybe just give people a bit of a rundown of what the intention is, Ben, for it, what we wanted people to get out of it, what it was, what kind of stuff we covered, and then we can have a quick chat about how it ran and maybe things that we learned along the way.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
So who's it for?
Who's it for? Well, I guess maybe just going back a little mini step, sort of before that, to just provide a bit of context. So from my own experience running a business, I had really kind of found getting a handle on both kind of money stories, our own money stories, and stories that our clients might be telling had a really big impact on how commercially successful we were. And not only kind of money stories, but then once I kind of opened that, particular Pandora's box, kind of realized there's so much at play when we are trying to figure out what prices to charge, and what people want to pay, and the whole kind of feeling of guesswork that sort of exists in that. And so this had been sort of a kind of important part of how we had run my last business, and that was kind of important to that. And then kind of working with you guys last year now on the 2020 Vision program, and kind of wanting to sort of one of my kind of outputs from that was wanting to sort of download a lot of the stuff that I had kind of picked up over the years, in many respects, to kind of create space for new stuff to come on board. And as part of a kind of a general sort of orientation that I was sort of looking at, of trying to kind of exist more in this place of being kind of Buddha on the boardroom. And, how we, like I said, how we kind of relate to money, how our clients relate to money can be sort of a complicated thing. And for lots and lots of people, particularly people who are kind of more what we, might sort of shorthand be more kind of purpose motivated, kind of the idea of profits, the idea of money, we kind of, for many people, actually, the more they kind of turn up the talk of profit, actually, there's somehow a kind of feeling or a reaction that you turn down the kind of volume of money, you turn down talk around money, and that somehow these things can't or shouldn't or don't sort of coexist. And I think one of the things that we were really keen is that, particularly for people who are kind of oriented and motivated by purpose, motivated by mission, wanting to make a positive dent on the world, was to kind of bring a lot of what I'd learned over the last 15 or 20 years around money and around pricing, and kind of offer that to people so that they are able to get some profit into their business, particularly if they are purpose oriented, particularly if they are mission oriented, because money is the kind of oil that makes our organizational wheels spin. And so particularly if you are motivated by purpose, you are motivated by kind of mission, actually getting more profit into your business will allow you to do more of the thing that you want to do. So we like as you sort of said, we're kind of two cohorts into the pricing course now, and we've had a kind of mix of people in there. We've had community builders in there, we've had coaches in there, we've had marketeers in there, we've had agency owners, we've had technologists, a whole sort of mix of people. But I think what's kind of really kind of clarifying, I think the people who sort of really able to kind of use and act on a lot of what we teach kind of earlier, so they tend to lead a small business, maybe just yourself, maybe you and a few other people. Oftentimes they are providing a service. Like I said, maybe it is coaching, maybe it's facilitation, maybe it is design services, something like that. And I think, and they're providing these to other businesses, which is again just lots in what we teach is very, very applicable to these people quite early on. And so I think that's kind of starting to feel like the people who kind of benefit most immediately and most quickly. Would that be sort of fair?
Yeah, no, I think that's, it's that interesting thing. It can apply to many different industries. I think it can apply to all sorts of businesses, but particularly given, and I think we'll dive into this a bit deeper in terms of some of the feedback we've got, in terms of the approaches that we advocate. I think it becomes more effective when you are able to have conversations directly with the buyers. and with the people who are making the decisions. And I'm really understanding essentially the beneficiary. And the way I look at it, the person who's going to benefit from the service is the person making the decision. That my understanding is that having that relationship means that you can put some of these approaches into you can feel like you're making more progress with these approaches, as opposed to sometimes when you're doing something like a product or even a community where you have many customers and many views of what value means, and we can talk about that later. That's an important that can be a bit of a nuance or a bit of a challenge there, but again, still possible. The fundamentals are the same. I was going to say, I'd add on to that, the other aspect for me, I think one of the key things is this kind of connecting the number that you put as a price to you. Somehow it has to, a lot of the people that I think are interested in this work or who struggle with pricing, the biggest challenge is the value that they talk about is so tied to either themselves or the complexity and intricacy and beauty of the thing that they're creating. And so they feel more value means more stuff. So higher prices means more stuff. So the more I make this complicated, the more I make this full of stuff, the higher I can charge. And I believe one of the key learnings I hope for people, beyond some of the tactics and strategies, I hope that we can communicate that it isn't about you. And I think this is the message always. It isn't about you, and it's all about the customer, the person that you're trying to serve. And whether they want to pay 10 grand or 10 quid has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And that's the job, I think, that we're trying to help people accomplish, is actually which end of the spectrum do these people sit, 10K or 10 quid? And then it's up to you to decide whether you want to work with them. Is that fair? Another way of looking at these things?
Very much so. I think, and maybe sort of leaping ahead, if so, sort of tell me. I guess there were a couple of, certainly for me, kind of sort of reflections, kind of rememberings, if that's a word, as we kind of went through the course last week. And one is like the point that you're saying there is just that actually I think we got quite far into the course last week and people still hadn't made that kind of, that absolute kind of, to excuse the pun, penny dropping kind of realization that actually that's what it's about, which obviously is then a kind of failing in the teaching, because actually that is the key point, that it is not about you. It is about what's happening with the person on the other side of the table. And so the task, the job, the opportunity is to understand that. So I think, that is a really important thing. And one of the other things which kind of came up, which again isn't really about the kind of tools and tactics, but is something that's come up a little bit in conversation with people since, and actually kind of reflects a little bit my route into this whole thing, is that for everybody who was part of the last cohort and actually the first cohort and many of the people we've spoken to since, all of these people actually, there is, even before you get into the kind of specifics of how you learn, how you understand what your clients want to pay, everybody is worth more than they think. You are worth more than you think. And so even before you get into any of the, the perceived complexities, there is room for you to put your prices up. And actually that alone, price is an important signal. And our clients are looking for signals all of the time. They're looking for reassurance, new clients, whatever. And the prices that we charge do send an important signal. And I think, that was the other just kind of remembering that kind of came out of it, just kind of encouraging people to kind of go a little bit further than they might feel comfortable with now. That is a very simple win, actually, that many people can make.
And I think this is, to me, in terms of like kind of who we're talking to, and I think who we can really help, is there's an element of self-confidence here. I think if you are supremely confident about your value and your whether it's a pathological kind of so scary, I don't, total egotistical, I don't care what other people think, then this isn't for you. You can do your own thing and you go. But if there's something around like you're not sure about whether you're allowed to charge that much, or you kind of like feel it's unfair if you charge too much, or you're still trying to work out the work that you do, is that how do I put a number to that stuff? I think if you're having that kind of challenge, I think this is where I believe these kind of conversations outside of the course can be helpful, because on the course it's very much we focus on how, how to do these things, how to discover the value. I think what we can do with these kind of the Waking Up to Money show is just hopefully get you to that space of a bit more confidence. It's okay to learn the how, because you're actually waking up to the fact that it isn't about me. I have to shift out of this mindset of actually I'm not good enough, or I haven't got, I'm not allowed to charge more. If we can build up that confidence, because once you've got that, then all the tactics and tools are very easy to learn, and it's just about practicing. It's just about doing it again and again and again. And a story that comes up that reminds me around confidence, I would say, and this might be a male-female thing, I'm not sure, but my wife picked me up on this. I was going through the garage yesterday because I'm trying to clear it out, and I had this big, massive file. I was looking through, and I found like my first ever job contract, and I found this email, a printout of an email I sent. I think I was 3 years into the job, and they'd given me a promotion, all right, and they'd given me a certain salary. And I wrote to them and saying, I don't think I'm valued enough. And I don't believe this is enough, considering the amount of work that I do for the company, or the value I create. I believe I'm worth a lot more than this, and I think you should be paying me this. And my wife said to me, I would never write that email. I would never actually even consider doing that. And it made me think, it's like there is I don't know what it was. I think part of it was I saw other people being paid a lot more than me who were doing But at the same time, I believed I was creating that value, and I believed actually I was allowed to ask that. How to do it, in the right way. I don't think I did it very sophisticatedly. I just asked for the price. They knocked me down, and I said yes immediately. I should have discussed that a bit more. But at the same time, I think just even being in that space of saying I'm worth more, I believe now part of our job now, maybe with this show as well, trying to get people to consider that they are worth more.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and I think very, very true. I think there's lots of people who wouldn't have kind of brought that up, and like the thing that you sort of talk about there being, of course there is a small, and I think it is actually a very small subsection of kind of pricing psychopaths who have just that sort of some sort of kind of veneer of invincibility, and they don't question any of these things, and they just kind of go with what they. But I think actually it is a very, very small percentage of people, and clearly those are not the people we're sort of talking to. But I think it is small. Like I was having this conversation with a bit of an email chat with a friend of mine, and he runs his own business, and I was kind of recounting to him one of my other kind of key staging posts on my route into this whole kind of area of exploration, and it was with a teacher of mine, and he was running a course called Work, Sex, Money, Dharma, which is basically the kind of big objects of life seen via a Buddhist lens. And on the money segment of the course, it was all delivered via video, and he kind of opened by saying, so if I say to you, money, 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 what comes up for you? And it was in asking that was the first time I'd ever really thought, and actually loads came up for me, like, as part of that sort of exploration, loads and loads came up for me. And actually it was the first time that I'd actually really started to see so much of that sort of the stories and all the things which kind of bubble up, things we inherited from family, things we inherit from culture, society, everything that you're kind of talking about what men do, what women do, all of this sort of thing. There's so much kind of wrapped up in it. But I kind of put that to this friend of mine who also runs a business, and he was saying, actually every entrepreneur he knows struggles with this in some form. And so I think, I think it's easy, that pricing psychopath is really in a minority. And actually, I think almost everybody else, to varying degrees, struggles with this in some form. It makes kind of the whole thing around money and pricing guesswork, actually.
I'd be curious, for those of you listening live, when you heard Ben say money, 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 money. What was the first word that sprang to mind? It'd be nice. Well, I'd appreciate if you and totally cool if you're not comfortable with it, but just share in the chat a word that came up for you. I find that it's a useful way of just connecting to not only your own story, but maybe to other people's stories, because the words that we share sometimes trigger or make us aware of maybe some of the stories that we. Thank you very much, Alex. Fear.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Alex. That was the same for me, actually. It was a lot of fear around that.
I'd actually for me as well. Like a story, particularly around that I've inherited is money is freedom. But then the flip side of that is no money is prison. is inability to have choices. Uncomfortable. Thank you, Sam. Yeah, I think if we feel uncomfortable about these of that word, how do we price well?
Yeah, and how do we do loads of our work well? Because obviously pricing is just the kind of the label on the tin. Really, it's where it comes out. But of course, dealing with money, interacting with money is about pricing. It's about almost every aspect. Is why that that course, work, sex, money. That's about the three big kind of objects. But of course, money. We can't separate money out from how we work, how we live, all of these things.
Not yet.
Even before you get to pricing. Not yet.
Not yet. I do dream of a Star Trek world where we have no money.
Yeah. Good point. Not yet. Yeah. We can't. No.
And we're flying off into the cosmos. Oh, Andrea says hollow. Ooh. So there's an emptiness. The way I read into that. This idea of the money is nothing. It has no meaning. Or no intrinsic. I don't know. I'm not trying to grasp the words here, but it's feeling like it doesn't matter. Why we?
Yeah, that's a really interesting, because I think what tends to happen, in a lot of instances, is the kind of the general reaction, the kind of movement after that, the kind of invitation to the words, is that what we tend to realize for some of us, we kind of it's grasping, we just need it, like you say, the freedom, security, safety. If all of those things, then I need it because I need more freedom, I need more security, I need more safety. So we tend to have a kind of grasping thing. Or for other people, it's more of a no, it's not important. Your money's not important to me, and are kind of pushing away. But of course, they are just two sides of the same coin. Essentially, it's kind of, whilst it manifests in different ways, it's the same kind of a same sort of behaviors being prompted.
Cool. I am going to go back to a couple of things that people have said to us about the course.
Yeah, good idea. That was the point of today's session.
As a way of just kind of like communicating some of the things that people have got from doing it, and hopefully then we can talk around that to help anyone who's listening is to get their understanding of how it can help them. And I think one of the things that came back from the feedback that helped someone was the idea of making themselves easier to buy. And this concept of being easy to buy, which I'll be curious. Let us know in the chat what that means to you. What does it mean to make yourself easy to buy to your customers? If you were going to say, I want to be easy to buy for my customers, what is it that you would do? What is it that makes you think of? Please share that in the chat if you can. In the meantime, Ben, what is it that we're trying to get people to do, and why is it important to be easy to buy?
Well, I would be interested to know. Obviously, I have studied the feedback form that came last night. Very good. But if I hadn't, Was there anything in particular about their understanding, their interpretation of being easier to buy? Or was it they were just kind of noting that as given that is the fourth module that was important?
I'm having trouble hearing you.
So thank you, Siri. No, it was specifically one of the things that they've learned that they are going to now use more often in their work.
Okay. And so I think particularly I mean, there's a kind of huge amount in that. So for the purpose of benefit of people, the fourth module on the training is around this idea of being easier to buy. And there's a lot in that. There's a lot of different things that you can sort of play with. One of the kind of simple aspects of that is about the importance of choice. Because when we are deciding anything, whenever a customer or client is trying to make a decision to buy you, there's kind of some risk in every decision. Now, the work that you do probably doesn't kind of feel particularly dangerous to you, and in many instances probably isn't dangerous. But actually, whenever we're buying something, and this is true for every one of your customers or clients, whenever we're buying something, there's always a little question of doubt. Is this going to do the thing that I want it to do? So there's a little bit of kind of dis-ease in the kind of heart mind of the buyer. And so it's really important that we remove as much of the kind of ambiguity, as much of the kind of dis-ease, as much of the uncertainty as possible. And one of the aspects of that, and it is just one of the aspects, is about the use of kind of choice. Because the human brain isn't good at making absolute judgments on anything. If someone comes to you, Carlos, and said, "I want," like if you're thinking back to your old business, if want a kind of website, and what tends to happen, what happens in a lot of instances, is a client comes, they ask us to do the thing that we do, we go away, we write a proposal, and we say, "Here you go, it's going to cost you £12.50, and here's the proposal." But the problem is that the brain that comes with your customer and client, because you can't separate those two things out, not yet anyway, the kind of brain doesn't know actually, because it can't make a value judgment. It can't make an absolute value judgment. So it only knows the value of things in comparison. And so what tends to happen is when we just give a proposal with a kind of single price in it, the brain that comes with your customer or client doesn't know if that's good value. And so it has to go looking for information to be able to make a comparison, to be able to make a value judgment. And so the way that happens in most instances is they go compare you to somebody else, because that's the way of making that comparison. And so when we don't offer choice, we're actually making it harder for our clients and customers to choose. And we're actually making them have to go check with other people, check other suppliers to see how we compare. And so the whole kind of dance of selling, the whole dance of pricing is really one of controlling the comparisons. And everything that we kind of look at in the course is how you get the information that you need to be able to understand options that your customer or client might want to buy, to understand the choices that you should offer them. But the simple principle, I think, which they're probably talking to in that feedback, is you have to be offering choices. You have to be offering options, because it's a really key part of being easier to buy.
So there's so two things sprang to mind when you were talking there. So earlier I was talking about this promotion, and then kind of negotiating a new salary. Basically, I wanted to get paid more. I had no idea what the number should be. It was really difficult. And the only reason I picked that number is because I found out what someone else was being paid. Yeah. And so I had then a figure to compare to. But if someone said, "Oh, how much should you be paid?" I'd go for the market rate. I'd look for anything that gave me a reference point. Otherwise, if I didn't, then I wouldn't feel confident about the choice, because I don't know if that was the right choice. So that's the thing that sprang to mind, is like this real need to grasp onto some kind of reference point, wherever I could find it, internally or externally. The other bit, I think, putting this person's feedback into context, their particular service or business that they're working on at the moment is quite complex. It's already, when you're talking about fraught with danger, it's kind of, I found it challenging to really understand when they were explaining it to me. And so there was within that, I think it was within the context that they were struggling to get people to understand the value of it. And so part of it, I think, and this maybe relate to anyone who has something that's quite, even like coaching or something that's quite amorphous, doesn't really have a set thing. You buy this and you get this type of thing, or you're not able to explain it in that way. Being able to think about ways to bring down that anxiety or that fear or that messiness of understanding, is this worth that amount of money? I think is what you're talking to there. Part of it is being able to present these options in a way that makes people, okay, I can be a bit more confident about my decision.
Yeah. And of course, the other thing, which your example also talks to with your salary, which is another aspect of this same kind of being easier to buy puzzle, is the thing around anchoring. Because, so in your instance, you said, like, I think I'm worth this, which you took as a sort of information, and they kind of negotiate from that point.
Yeah.
But the thing that happens, of course, whatever figure you'd gone back to them with, they would negotiate from.
Yeah.
So, you could have said a figure that was 3 times that amount, and that may have felt really sort of uncomfortable, but that would have been then the figure that they negotiate from. And actually, that is also an important part of this managing choices, is the range of figures that we go back to people with, because, going back to that brain in the that comes with your customer or client, it's looking for comparisons, and the highest figure is the one which a reference is made from.
And at a personal level, I think part of it, there was a fear on my part of being rejected. And so I was looking for 2 very clear anchors: how much I'm being paid now, how much I saw this other person being paid. And you know what? I picked the middle.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go. I don't want to go further because that feels like, I'm starting to feel pressure around that. And I wanted more than this. So I kind of felt comfortable going through the middle. But from what I've learned from you and this understanding this money journey, that wasn't helping me. If I'd been able to be a bit more bold and being a bit more clear about, right, this is the value that I can bring to the business, and I can relate it to all of these things that the business could do, and I could probably have asked even more. And then being prepared to be rejected. Yeah. And then, okay, fine, let's talk. Rather than, oh my God, I feel such a fool. Oh my God, they think I'm an idiot. Oh my God, they think I'm really greedy. Oh my God, they think I'm a bit egotistical. Rather than it being just an objective, well, that's what I think it's worth. Rather than what I'm worth. Yeah.
And so the thing which then I'm kind of reminded of that is this point around actually in reality what the consequences of rejection are. For you negotiating, for anybody kind of listening, negotiating with clients, the story of rejection is, of course, much worse than the reality of the rejection. Because like you say, what's actually going to happen in reality? They're going to say, no, I can't do that. Let's talk. And, you're not going to be thrown out of the tribe and kind of forced to live on the outside of the fence with all of the scary animals. That's just not happening in this state of rejection. It will be, it's an invitation to have the next round of conversation. And that's true if you're negotiating a salary. It's also true if you are negotiating with the client. All that can happen is that effectively they can say back to you, I don't agree with, and of course that can be expressed in all sorts of different ways. Some people might get funny about it. Some people might get defensive. Some people might get angry. Some people might, be kind of easy with it. But all they can say is, no, I don't agree with that point. So let's talk. And it's about getting comfortable with that. So the kind of fear of rejection is a kind of pesky little bedfellow in this dialogue.
And what's coming up for me is that at some level, they've somehow made a decision in their head already, and what I'm understanding when it comes to the pricing conversation is just trying to help them be comfortable with that decision. Yeah. And so whether that's that, ultimately they decided not to go with you because they were just fishing, or they've actually decided they really want to work with you, and they just need to make sure that they justify to themselves and to their partner and to their business partners and to anyone else who asks them why they've chosen you and why it's important for them to pay that money.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, I find that a bit more helpful, because what you're doing is you're finding a way of building their confidence in their choice, rather than forcing them down a path, or being, essentially like that sleazy snake oil merchant, convincing someone to get something they don't really want.
Yeah. And I for me, I don't really believe you can sell something to someone who doesn't really want it. I think certainly within the context of everybody we're kind of talking here, you're selling to people who have decided that they do want it. They may not be sure who they want it from, and then part of the kind of requirement actually is to establish that quite early. If somebody is just fishing and they actually would rather go with somebody else, and they're using you to fill in that comparisons thing because someone else has not provided kind of options, you want to know that as soon as possible, actually. And talking about money early is a real key way of understanding that, because if you understand early that you are being used as a comparison tool, to put it kind of kindly, then you kind of know not to invest more time, energy, and whatnot in trying to make that happen, because it's probably not going to happen. Yeah. But then the flip, of course, is no, actually they do want to, and then what you're doing is you're helping them understand the value of what you're doing, because that then can determine what you earn.
I think a kind of a topic that we've touched on in the past, and we sometimes talk about in the program, is this idea of if you're a coach, you really have the skills to actually work with price well, because it is around coaching people to clarity about their decision, essentially. And it reminds me of, like, the way I'm looking at selling these days is that it isn't about negotiating a price straight away. It's about, for me, just firstly finding out how clear are you about this thing that we're offering, about what your intention is, why you want to do it, what is it that's going to be better for you. And I feel like without that clarity, there's always kind of like excuses. Oh, it's the wrong time. Oh, it's a bit too much money. Oh, it's it might not work for my partner, my friends, or whatever it is. And I think that's just a sign of not really sure why I want to do it in the first place. And I think and being in a space where you can sit with that uncertainty, and this is where I'm linking it now to my kind of journey of understanding how I get triggered or I get upset, or by understanding actually these are just I need to, if I'm able to sit with those that indecision and that fear, and then for myself, how that helps you sit with other people's indecision and fear, and less about, oh, please do it, and then let's find out why. What is it? You realize actually they really don't want it as early as possible. You don't have to push them, like you say. You don't have to push them to do something. You just say, okay, when you're a bit clearer, then come back, or we can have a conversation to help you be more clear about it. And then it feels a bit more collaborative as a journey, rather than someone trying to push something on you.
Yeah, and I'd say kind of both sides of that are important, because it's in some respects, yes, if you're not ready, then come back when you are ready. That is true, but equally, we can also, if we're not careful, we can just be using that as a way of avoiding the conversation. Because actually, in many instances, somebody may be saying that, but what they're actually saying is, I don't yet know, I don't yet fully understand, I don't yet fully appreciate what it is that you're trying to do. And actually, it's an invitation for the next iteration, the next spin of the conversational wheel. So, those two things, being mindful to keep both those two things together.
Exactly. I think it's when we unconsciously do something. So we say, oh, I'll come back later when you're clear, because I'm kind of scared of having that conversation and feeling rejected, as opposed to, I clearly know this person is not ready. Yeah. Because they are too confused at the moment. And any pushing now will just tip them into more chaos. And for me, it relates to this question we had at the beginning about what money means to us, is that if we're more aware of the feelings and the needs underlying those feelings when we talk about money, I think the better we're able to connect with the people we want to help when they're having certain feelings, and you can observe them, and you can clearly see what's going on for them, to work with that situation more skillfully, more compassionately, rather than bulldozing someone into a decision or running away because you don't want to feel like you're pushing them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like maybe we can have more of these conversations around just being a bit more skillful and self-aware around these things, so that we can communicate that this pricing thing isn't about just selling more for the sake of making more money. It's about being able to work with the right people and have them in a much better place to pay the money that you need to be paid, and they need to pay in order to get the value that they want. One of the things that we've been asking people, particularly in the past cohorts, is we'd like to hear your questions and topics that we could riff off of. And I wanted to kind of like finish off on a topic that was sent through by Beth, who was on the first cohort, Beth Derry. And she was asking, the topic that she wanted to us to talk about is about taking time out to focus on strategy when work keeps coming in. So for her, things are going well. Clients are really interesting. They love her work. Work keeps them coming in. She's actually doing well now and earning more. But she needs to. She may need to say no to some tempting work in order to have time and space to make changes. So I think it's this idea of this combination of working in the business rather than on the business, or working in the pricing rather than on the pricing. So I don't know if you have any thoughts, or and if anyone has any questions related to that, please feel free to post them into the chat. Any thoughts around how to divide that space, or that experience of not having enough space to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a thing around discipline for sure, isn't there? And I think a big part of that, I think it's very, it's kind of counterintuitive in some respects to turn down work, isn't it? Really, because that feels like an uneasy thing to do. And also, I mean, it feels uneasy because of the sort of perceived risk around it, but also because of the way we're all brought up, really, or most of us brought up. This kind of feeling busy is actually much more reassuring, even before you get into sort of stories of, kind of money or opportunity or what, might be happening down the line. Actually, feeling busy is something that, we're actually all much, much more comfortable with. And so we kind of, get sort of stuck in a place where we do keep taking things on because we feel more busy and that makes us feel good. And so it goes on. But of course, when we do that, we aren't creating the space to do the classic thing of, kind of working on the business, not in the business. So you need, through some discipline and probably with the support of other people, to create the space, whatever the frequency is, so that there is a fixed point where you can be forced to step out of your business a little bit, to have different conversations with different people about the work that you do, about how you're selling, about how you're pricing. So there is that kind of formal structure. The structure would kind of help that. And actually, the practice of saying no to some things is incredibly important, actually, because, it creates some space for you to be able to do that work. But, it kind of forces some change in the business, actually. It forces some change in you. It forces change in the work you do and how you do it. To practice saying no, it will be an invitation for new things to change. And it's very, very hard to do because we're not taught how to do it. And so actually, the quicker, the sooner you get in to start experimenting with no, the better, I would say.
There's something here around boundaries. When you talk about no, how do we create clear boundaries for ourselves as well as for the people that we may or may not want to work with? And then I link that to kind of clarity of intention and knowing what's enough. And so there's, I think when you're clear about why you're in business and what it is you're getting out of it, and not only the financial needs and targets and goals, but also the emotional needs and energy needs, relationship needs, needs around for yourself. And and getting away and stop thinking about it that being selfish, but actually, to be self-sustaining, not only in terms of the business, but in terms of your energy. Not knowing what they are will I believe then just lead to a habitual yes, more, because we don't know what's happening further down the line, and so we need to make sure we get as much money now, rather in case there's no money later. I think questioning that, and then and being clear about why you're saying no, and it links a bit to, I think, when we're talking about at the beginning of the course, is like you ask that question, what will more money buy you? So to give you a real clear intention as to why you're pricing better, and that links as to what is this business giving me other than work to do. And I think if we're able to then question that and say, okay, I need space, I need time with the family, you start creating these clear silos. You'd be a bit more disciplined. Right, I'm not going to do that because it's going to impinge on this other part of my life, which is also important. And in my head is like, I want to be able to pick up the kids and drop them off at school and be flexible for my wife. So I design the business in that way. And I will not work with certain people if that entails me having to do a specific 9 to 5 on a certain time. I would find it very difficult to go back to corporate because it's going to impinge on that need for freedom. But that means I need to then design this business in a way where I say no to the wrong things that don't serve me and yes to the things that do. Which may also charging more for less time, because that's important for me to have that freedom. So and then there's the discipline of actually having the accountability to actually spend that extra time you do have on thinking about your pricing as well as your business strategy or the products you want to create. Cool. Awesome. Any last words, Ben, on that?
No, the only thing that was coming up just as you were saying there, just in the Happy Pricing Manifesto, we talk about there's a few things there about saying no, and one of them is an afternoon nap is not a luxury. And so I think that it talks to the same thing, whatever is important to you, actually, to kind of use pricing, to use how you sell, to create the space, to create the time for you to be able to do the things which are important. Whether that's have a nap in the afternoon, whether that's to read in the afternoon, whether that's to go for a walk, to recharge, replenish, whatever it might be, that gives you the energy to be able to do the work that you want to do.
Yeah.
And the only other thing that I'd say is, I think, like you were talking about not working with people 9 to 5, and so that ruling out some corporate things. I think you're so far beyond ever being accepted back into the corporate environment that you don't need to worry about that anyway.
Oh no, my safety net has gone. Gosh, I've burned my bridges now. I'm stuck here. Oh dear. Cool. Something else sprang to mind, but I'll leave it at that. For those of you who are watching now, and there are some topics that you'd love us to talk more about or talk to, please click on the green button in the middle of your screen, and it goes to a type form. And I'll put for those of you just listening on the podcast afterwards, I'll stick it in the show notes so that as well as answering questions live. We'd love to know what it is that would help you. And we've got a whole list of things that we can talk about over the next few weeks. But we'd rather kind of focus on the challenges that you have and see how we can be of service there. Next time, I think we're going to do this fortnightly for now to give us to pace this out a bit more. Actually, that reminds me of the thing I did want to talk about in terms of feedback from the course. And I think is going to influence this, is giving enough space to absorb the information. It's quite an intense course. There's a lot to learn, isn't there, Ben?
There is. Yeah. And so a bit more percolation time, a bit more marinading, I think is beneficial all round. Yeah.
And so next time round, maybe toying with the idea of making it over 2 weeks rather than a single week, just because between each kind of, we do these live sessions, there's a lot to learn, there's a lot to talk about and process. And then there is some space to just work out what it means for you, and then to come back with the right questions. It's that classic thing. I can remember my son was talking to me the other day about put downs that he remembers like a day later that he should have used.
Needs to make a note of those.
Yeah, exactly. The questions, the really pertinent questions, all the things that I wish we'd have talked about now that I'll remember probably this afternoon. We need some space for the brain to process those. So that's something that we'd like to do. And on that, maybe we want to like space out these sessions as well, so that we can gather some questions and ideas from all of you listening, and be able to help you as best we can. Cool. So please follow us. Follow the Happy Startup School on Crowdcast so that you can get your alerts as to when we're going live. I encourage you to download the Crowdcast app, actually, because that's a really useful way. You can just listen along live as well as watch.
While washing up.
While you're washing
the dishes.
Exactly. So, Sam, every Tuesday morning, every 2 weeks, you can do the washing up and have us piping through your ears. And it just gives you a little alert, and it's quite easy to get on board. And then you can also schedule stuff and queue stuff up, as well as listen back to it easily, a bit like a podcast app. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Ben.
Thank you, Carlos.
It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you, everyone who's been listening live. Really appreciate your attention and energy. And until next time, which will the topic for next time is pricing and community. And so we're going to play around with that idea. We've been running a community, online community, a membership community for a good 3-4 years now. And yeah, it's been interesting doing the pricing course and reflecting on how we tackle the whole pricing thing. Not as skillfully as I'd like, but anyway. Cool. You take care. Have a great rest of the morning.
Likewise, and thank you all. See you next
Bye-bye.
time.